I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Treesan's death.
5 disturbing reactions of teenage convicts. Have you ever wondered how ruthless a murder convict can get? Murder convicts can sometimes be some of the deadliest of all criminals. Imagine being told that your life will now be confined to a 4x6 prison cell, or worse, that you will soon be executed. One is bound to show remorse. However, that is not the scene with some psychopaths. Here are 5 convicts who gave disturbing reactions to their sentences. 11th of May 1993. Michael was only 17 years old when he murdered 2 young women. Michael had been a troubled child since childhood, according to his mother. He had difficulty sleeping and interacting with other children. He was always agitated and aggressive towards his mother. Michael's psychiatrist had given up on him by the time he was 11 years old, according to his mother. Michael, then 17, traveled from Minnesota to Iowa to rob a store. Vicky Bowman Hall, an innocent store clerk, was shot and killed there. Michael was on a godless rampage at this point. The adolescent then went to another Iowa county and shot Sheila Myers, an innocent store clerk. When asked to describe what happened, Michael smirked and described Sheila Myers' half-gasp, half-scream as he pulled the trigger. He admitted that it gave him a sense of power. Michael spoke casually to the officer who was part of the team that arrested him. When his lawyers failed to persuade the court that he had a mental illness, he was asked how he felt after the shooting. A doctor who states in his report that if he is not given antipsychotic medication, he will rob people, use weapons, and commit violent acts. Despite this, he was released without any medication. Michael was seen smiling and laughing as the sentence was read. This is not the behavior of someone who has been told that his life is nearly over. Killing someone, according to Michael's logic, is equivalent to pouring a bucket of water on someone entering a pool. By this, he meant that people will die regardless of their age, whether they are 80 or 30. Michael attempted to murder a fellow inmate while incarcerated. Despite his survival, the inmate required stitches to close more than 13 lacerations. Michael was sentenced to an additional 25 years in prison for this attempted murder. MacDonald joined the army at the age of 19 on June 17, 1924, in Liverpool, United Kingdom. MacDonald was sexually assaulted by one of his army corporals, causing him significant trauma until his death in 1947. He was eventually discharged from the army and sent to a mental institution after being diagnosed with schizophrenia. He changed his name and moved to Australia in 1960. MacDonald's first victim was Amos Hugh Hurst, a 63-year-old man he befriended and went on a drinking spree with in 1961. They went from the local pub to the man's house and drank more alcohol. They became inebriated and he strangled Hurst. He then left the apartment, leaving him on his bed. Hurst was said to have died by accident and MacDonald was exonerated. Alfred Reginald Greenfield was MacDonald's second victim by mid-1961. MacDonald met Greenfield, 41, in Green Park and offered him alcohol before luring him away and waiting until he fell asleep, before stabbing him 30 times and severing his genitals. MacDonald murdered his third and fourth victims, 37-year-old Ernest William Cobbin and Frank Gladstone McLean, in a similar manner. MacDonald earned the moniker Mutilator for his method of killing and severing his victims' genitals. MacDonald murdered his fifth victim, 37-year-old Patrick Joseph Hackett, in June 1962. MacDonald was identified and arrested following an investigation by Melbourne police. He did not deny the killings, instead attributing them to an unquenchable desire to kill. MacDonald claimed that voices in his head told him that the people he killed were the corporal who raped him in the army when he was a teenager. In September 1963, his trial began, and he was charged with 4 counts of murder. During the trial, MacDonald pleaded not guilty and claimed insanity. He testified in the court and details of how he murdered those 4 men in cold blood, demonstrating how strangely a person can react, even at his worst moment. The adolescent was accused of murdering 3 students and shooting 2 others. In February 2012, Thomas Michael was responsible for the tragic shooting at Chardon High School in Ohio. In the 3rd week of September 1994, Thomas was born. He was 17 years old when he used a .22 caliber handgun to murder 3 students and injure several others. Around 7:30 a.m., Thomas began shooting at random students in the cafeteria. he shot 5 male students and 1 female student before fleeing. Frank Hall, a school coach, pursued and subdued him with the assistance of Joseph Rizzi, a teacher at the school. The injured students were rushed to the hospital, but 3 of them did not survive. Lane was arrested and his trial began quickly. He was found guilty. However, his behavior and complete hatred for humans as represented in court caused a commotion. Thomas posted on his Facebook page about killing some people weeks before he murdered his classmates. There was no mention of a location, and no one took the warning seriously. On the day of the murders, he wore a sweatshirt with the word killer emblazoned on it to school. He replicated this sick sense of humor during his trial, showing up in court wearing a white shirt with the word killer scrawled on it. He described how he murdered his victims in a disrespectful manner, mocked the victims' families, and gave them the middle finger. That is correct. This disturbing reaction will stay with you for the rest of your life. He treated the entire trial as a farce, laughing and cursing the court as he was sentenced to 3 life sentences, 1 for each student he murdered. Thomas and 2 other inmates escaped from Allen Correctional Institute in Lima, Ohio in September 2014. Thomas and his cohorts were apprehended less than 24 hours after the Chardon High School was closed down as a precaution. Thomas is now incarcerated at Warren Correctional Institution in Youngstown, Ohio, a maximum security prison. He will serve the remainder of his sentence in complete confinement and isolation until his name is called to face the most unforgiving penalty in the legal system, judicial execution. This is Jeremy Christian, who was arrested in Portland, Oregon for the murder of 2 men on a Max Light Rail train. Christian stabbed and killed Ricky John Best, a 53-year-old retired Army officer, and Talisa Murata Namkai Mecca, a 23-year-old. He also stabbed Micah Fletcher, 21, but he survived. What happens next is the starting point for everything. Christian was caught on video yelling anti-Muslim and racist epithets at 2 black teenagers. His behavior irritated several passengers, who confronted him and barred him from approaching the terrified teenagers who had moved to the back of the train. Further attempts to de-escalate the situation resulted in Christian brandishing a knife, threatening to stab, and eventually stabbing the victims. But it doesn't end there. The police arrived and he was arrested, boasting about how he killed 2 people in broad daylight. But it's what happened in court that left the judge and jury in disbelief. He was charged with murder on 2 counts and attempted murder on 1 count. During the trial, he threatened to kill one of the victim's relatives in court. One of the victim's relatives read a victim's impact statement, and this is Christian's response. "I should have killed you," he admitted, but not slowly, but rather loudly and in open court. Christian was ultimately sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Randall Moore was on trial in November 2011 for the murder of his ex-wife Therese, Anne Marie Lynch. Moore kidnapped, sexually abused, and murdered Lynch. Lynch filed a protective order against Moore after leaving him. But Moore was not a man who could let go easily. He kidnapped Lynch and used her as a hostage. Officer Todd Rowland was the one who shot Moore while responding to the cries from the apartment. Moore shot Officer Rowland, who fortunately survived. Moore explains why he murdered his wife over the phone to 911. The police were eventually able to break into the house and arrest him. Moore nodded as Judge Joel Novak confirmed his conviction on all charges. The judge allowed the victim's family to read their victim impact statements. What follows is one of the most disrespectful moments in a court of law. Moore gets in a few words and interrupts Lynch's mother's victim's impact statement as she takes the stand and reads a somber statement. Moore also attempted to justify his actions, with only the resemblance of an apology coming from Officer Todd, whom he shot. Moore's evil behavior was chastised further by the judge, who expressed shock at such heartlessness. So, which reaction disturbed you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel for more such juicy content.